Bryan Zug, thank you so much for hosting the conversation here. This is really exciting because we're starting to do non-font awesome interviews and conversations. And you just so happen to have a brand new studio set up, which has been in the works for a while.
Yes,
So
indeed.
it looks great, man. It's an awesome setup. So all I had to do was show up and Bryan pressed a button and here we are. Like I don't have to worry about any of the tech. It's great. And we are going to be talking today about a book that Bryan co-authored called Why Design is Hard. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But I thought I'd see if you'd be willing to kind of give a background to your professional background in tech and design.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can kind of get to jumping into some of the ideas behind the book.
So I like to call myself a mutt of software and product design. So I built my first website in a small town in Colorado called Trinidad, Colorado, in 1995. I had a real estate agent client come in, and I had taught myself design, doing at-risk youth work, and doing flyers and T-shirts, hung out at the silk screeners. Got a copy of Illustrator and Quark Express on a little floppy disk, and I was off to the races.
Nice.
And then some of the businesses in town said, "Hey, your collateral for your little at-risk youth thing is better than ours for a business. Can you make stuff for us?" Yep. And I said, "Sure." Like I'm all self-taught in this. Like I've never done a 4-color brochure before. But if you pay me half, like what I should charge you, like for the first one, like, let's do it. And so then the internet came around and they came and said, well, we've been talking over the office that we need some websites. And there's nobody within 200 miles of here that knows how to build websites, but we figured you could figure it out. And so I started building real estate websites. And then I realized that there was no portal for the town and that I could basically become a web entrepreneur and create a business. Yeah. And so I created a portal from scratch for the town. Had no content to put on it. There were 2 newspapers, so I pitted the newspapers against one another for content deals and said, hey, if you sponsor this, I will give you a free website for a year, and I'll update it every week. Or if you will give me free content every Tuesday, because I wanted to publish on a certain day of the week. And then it took off. I thought it was gonna take me probably 6 weeks to sell out my sponsorships for the year. It took me like 4 days.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, this internet thing, there might be something here.
This internet thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And what a great time to jump into that stuff, because I hear these stories all the time where folks are, everything's new. It's like the Wild West, and people are just sort of like, well, I'm going to figure it out. Like I have enough of an idea to get started. And the rest of us are like, what is this black magic? Like, okay, you're the guy, so do it. And I always hear these stories of like, yeah, I knew a little bit to get started, and then people just figure it out as you go, which is,
and that was the
awesome.
Days there were no schools.
Yeah.
Like it was basically what we called view source. And so we would look at the code. Like if something was doing interesting, you just view source and say, how'd they do that? And we had no CSS at the time. CSS did not exist.
Yeah.
And we basically built all websites back then. The layout was done with invisible tables and invisible pixels, and you would get really tricky with it to do that stuff. And so I was self-taught along those lines. And then it just kind of went on from there. I got into doing Flash development and CD-ROM development. And I was the sort of person that like 4 or 5 years into it, corporations would hire if they couldn't afford a full team. They would hire me because I could do design, I could do the programming and database backend, and like the scripter survey or server scripting, and then also storytelling and product, and be able to pitch like with the decision makers and the executive suite and stuff. And so ended up doing a lot of educational CD-ROM things, moved out here to Seattle in 2000, and got involved in the startup community here, did tours of duty at Children's Hospital Seattle and Stanford, building online software, training like all their doctors and nurses on electronic health record systems that were coming online for the first time at the time. I was not really a big enterprise person. Because I was self-trained, I was never the best designer in the room. And I was never the best like coder in the room, and never the best sort of salesperson in the room. But in basically organizations that needed sort of, folks that kind of span all those different roles and sort of help teams come together in a cross-functional kind of way. In 2017, I got back into the enterprise and joined Amazon and realized there was this role called design program manager and design ops, which is basically the discipline of how do you help big UX teams and enterprises be as efficient as they can be. I like to use the term Goldie ops, like just enough process that doesn't scare them away, but helps them like relieve the pain. And then also collaborate. And that's kind of where the book came from. Was, I was at Amazon for a few years, then I was at Zillow for 4 years. It really is about how do you help people build things that they can't build on their own. And a lot of that is not about the tools you pick and whether you're good at the technical aspect of, say, Figma or something. It really is about relationships. And can you be human-centered and neighbor-centered in how you do your work, right? So if I have an engineer or a product manager, instead of getting frustrated with them, I should actually get to know them and listen to them and see if I can understand what their incentives, their motivations, what dragons are breathing down their neck, kind of a thing. And that if I can't do that, I'm going to be stuck in a very small cul-de-sac and I'm not going to be able to make a big impact. But if I want to make a big impact and build things that humans can't build alone, then I'm going to have to get really good at relationships. And that really is kind of where the book came from and why design is hard.
Yeah. I mean, you're speaking the font awesome language, because we always, our founder, Dave Gandy, and I mean, the whole team just sort of embodies this as it's about people first, like people first technology and design. That I think that in the tech space and probably, in the design space to a degree, there's a lot of really smart people in that space that can do a lot and get a lot done. If they get enamored with the tech itself, that they might be a genius in that way, but they may not be actually hitting their goal because they're not human-centered. And so for us, that human-centered component is the DNA of how our company works, not just the software that we make, but also how we operate as a company, how we work together and all of that. And I think that when you put, I mean, it can be so, there can be such like cheesy catchphrases like people first. And, you see this in like HR material. And of course everybody says that, but I think that when you're in a space where you recognize that's how people roll, they're at the end of the day, they're really just trying to solve problems for people. You can notice a difference. I've got
a good friend who's a writer. His name's David Dark. He's got a superhero name, that double consonant. And he's a great writer. And he's got this phrase where he says, America is a big experiment in what human beings owe to one another. And I sort of think of that on sort of a mid to micro scale with product development. Product development is, you can't make something impactful and big by yourself, right? There's the age of the unicorns is passing. It exists in startups sometimes, but in the enterprise, you've really got to honor the other human beings around you. And I often point back to one book that I'll talk about a lot is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, which is over 100 years old, and one of the most influential books. And really the only thing you need to take away from it is it's really impactful to talk to people and listen to them and really care about what they're saying. And like, if you show genuine interest and genuine listening, it will transform relationships.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen over and again. And kind of the work that I do and the teams that I help is that it's kind of this little product development is a little experiment in what human beings and cross-functional people owe to one another. And how do you come together to make that big impact?
Yep. And I think that when there's mutual, what's the right way to put it? When there are good relationships there, and hopefully you have the double bonus of everybody's having a good time, you're going to get so much more done, and you're going to be able to sort through complex problems in super creative ways. Whereas if somebody, I mean, in the business world in general, but like certainly in the startup space, like everybody they're trying to justify the existence by the work that they do, and they have to be the best, and they have to work the hardest, and all this. And I mean, you can get a lot done if you're fueled by that, but it's eventually going to run out.
Yeah.
And you, I mean, this is all an all of life thing. You can do that for a while. You're going to run yourself into the ground. Then you're not creating anything. You're no good to the world, So to me, it all connects,
When I describe, it was probably like 5 years ago or so, I started to describe what I do as a design program manager. In like my comical terms are all I do is negotiate trade deals, peace treaties, and I run group therapy when it's not working out, which is surprisingly a lot. In cross-functional teams.
Right.
We've got this thing in the book. So Dieter Rams. So he, let's say, you see that picture there? Yeah. So he's one of the main designers at Braun, and a lot of his design inspired like Apple iPods and like the Macintosh designs and all sorts of different stuff. And we've got this passage in the book where it says, okay, the image that we see of him most of the time is he's the lone designer. But he does not describe himself as a lone designer. And he's got this great story about, I think it was cognac or brandy, where he found out that the engineering team really liked cognac or brandy. And he basically just would go down every Friday and bring them a bottle and just hang out and shoot the shit. Yeah. And that really that embedded him with the engineers and gave them more of a fluid relationship and ended up helping them make better products and make them more fluidly.
100%. Man, well, maybe we can sort of jump in now that we get a little bit of your background, professional background, and kind of where your heart is in that, and get into a little bit of what inspired the book. Was there a specific frustration or a problem you were trying to solve, or a solution you were trying to get across to people, or at least point people in the right direction? What sort of sparked the idea for the book for you and Scott?
I think it was like, for me, being at Amazon and I wanted to get into a really big tech and just see what it was like. I wanted to be in the belly of the beast. And I had a good friend, folks in Seattle know Luz Bratcher. She gets around the design scene here in town. And she was at Amazon at the time, and she said, you should really look at some of the teams that here. They've got this role of design program manager, and it really we need people like you. And I was like, okay, cool. And I ended up landing on a team that did all the UX for fulfillment centers worldwide. Talk about being in the belly of the beast. We basically were a team of 15 people, and we were making the software that everybody in warehouses uses. And a lot of them are repetitive actions. So you've got software attached to automated devices and automation and robots and all sorts of stuff. And so people are doing things like this repetitive task 10,000 times a day, right? How do you begin to design for that and have human affordances for to avoid repetitive stress injury and different stuff like that. And then we did big labor interfaces as well, high data density interfaces that all the managers would use to get hundreds of thousands of people across the world into the right place in the right time, as far as the fulfillment center network around the world did. And I was just flabbergasted by how disorganized the entire process was when I got there. It took me a while to find my sea legs, but I remember I remember the exact moment where it felt like I was like, okay, I made a breakthrough in it. And I connected with this engineering team, like super senior engineers. They had a project and they wanted to do a kickoff, and the team leader was out of town at the time. And so I went in to do the kickoff. And I led with this this framework that I use called the Understand, Prototype, Build framework. It says you go through, at a base level in product development, you go through three phases. Understand, like the problem, the people, all that. Prototype, what you think might work. And then build stuff. Like, don't go build stuff before you understand or prototype. Mm-hmm. And then if you go through that, you're going to have like an impactful, like you're going to have the right problem, impactful solution. But if you skip a step, you're going to be working on the wrong problem, or you're going to be working on the wrong solution. Or if you just go straight to build, it's just going to be a train wreck. Mm-hmm. When I got to that third point of just the build, and I had been struggling to like get these figure this thing out so I could make an impact or we could do good work. These senior engineers just started laughing maniacally. They're like, you just described my life. Like, we get asked to build stuff that nobody's thought through all the fucking time.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. And and it usually gets the most chuckles out of senior engineers because they've gone through, built stuff that nobody really thought through, but it had to happen. Mm-hmm. And then it never ships. And the wasted effort is just in the billions and billions of dollars across the industry of stuff that people didn't really think through. They went and built stuff, and you could have known, and you could have done stuff fast. We're not talking about analysis paralysis or anything. Yeah. And so it was at Amazon that I really started to kind of go, okay, this is not, I thought the enterprise would be way smarter than I imagined. And I thought that it would have processes at scale that it didn't have. And so out of that, like Scott and I would always be chatting. We've been friends since 2005. And we had always sort of talked about these themes, and he's always sort of taken notes and saying, no, we should do, a project together sometime. And I was like, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. Well, then the pandemic hit and he had a health scare. The health scare basically kicked us into hanging out 2 or 3 times a week. And we would get together every Wednesday, usually at Chuck's Hop Shop here in Greenwood, neighborhood of Seattle, and have dinner. And we just started talking about these scenarios. And it was, I was at Amazon when the pandemic had hit and he had his health scare. Mm-hmm. But we just started talking about these themes because it was just the biggest thing that we could see in this kind of work that we do. Mm-hmm. And that's when he's like, we should write a book. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? I'm a really slow writer because I grew up in a family where I was required to be a perfectionist. Mm. And like I have a very hard time in certain circumstances. And public writing seems to be one of those circumstances where one of the reasons I want to do conversational video stuff is it's easier for me. Yeah. But like writing, I'm just like totally, I can't get that shitty first draft out, like in, the Anne Lamott terms.
It is a hard thing. Yeah.
And so, I said, hey, what does that mean? I write really slow. And he's like, well, that's great because we've been taking notes and we've been whiteboarding and writer's rooming this whole thing. Like, mm-hmm. He's like, I can do a shitty first draft real fast. And mm-hmm. that's kind of where the book was formed. And we had an original, originally it was called the Design Hero Manifesto. We wanted to make it a short manifesto. But mm-hmm. It was, the arc of it was problematic. It didn't test well. And then we ended up changing the name just like, what's it really about? Well, this is about why design's hard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. We'll be bumping around and editing some of this stuff out here. Yeah. So do you think that there is like a common misconception about design work that you think the book helps to debunk?
Yeah, I think that, I've got this sort of thing that the way that I frame it a lot of times is, this is not the job, this is the job, right? And like, the book is really about that quite a bit, right? And like Figma is not the job. Like there was a billboard kind of in the Fremont neighborhood. Figma put up a big billboard. It's right between like Amazon and Google and Meta and Adobe and kind of all these tech, Tableau and stuff. And then it had their new branding and it said, make, believe. And like, I'm like, well, that's not how it works, but that's how we train our designers a lot of times.
Tell me a little bit about that. What do you mean?
So like the book addresses this culture that we have, which Scott and I have called artifact culture, right? And so we train people to use tools like Figma or to do some kind of like user journey process. And if I make this artifact, right, and I really think it through and I deliver it, the world will change. My ideas will get made. I will have an impact, right? What's missing from that is I don't know what to make, right? I've got ideas, but I have to check them with other people in a cross-functional team in order to make things that are impactful, right? And so the book primarily, the big theme is like getting away from that artifact worship and getting into relational reality of how you do that sort of stuff. Yep. One of my favorite books about design is an information architecture book that never mentions the word information architecture, but it's called How to Make Sense of Any Mess.
Okay.
By Abby Covert. Yeah. And that's the job. We're always going to have messes. We're always going to have problems.
Right.
And a lot of the messes are going to be way bigger than we can do on ourselves, by ourselves. And that's basically kind of another way of looking at the thesis of the book.
Yeah. Again, it goes, I mean, there's that common thread all the time. It's really about healthy, good relationships where there's good communication and you're defining the problem in human-centered terms and all of that.
Well, and it's good communication, but it's also like, I mean, ethnography is like a big highfalutin word. You got to sit with people for a while. You have to be in a relationship with them, and you got to understand and be genuinely curious. You know, and if you come from a school, and most of our schools do not train this into folks, that like the relational aspect of all this stuff, it's very difficult, and you end up getting burned out, frustrated, and a lot of people end up like not advancing in their careers the way that they want and making the impact the way that they want.
This is making me think of a conversation that I had with our co-founder Dave recently, where he was reflecting on, he was a coach for a Lego league for his kids and another group of kids. It's a way for kids to get into engineering, you know, and kids as young as like third grade or whatever. So he's coaching these kids on how to make robots, and they have competitions and scrimmages and things like that. And part of their grade when they would put out a project was how well did you work together. That was like that was at the top of their grade, and the kids were just like, well, what does that matter? We just want to make something cool. And it's like, no, you have to learn how to work well together, because if you don't, you're not, it's going to be really hard to come up with solutions that are going to work.
And really looking at where do things like mentoring fit in, and coaching, and like, how do you learn to do this stuff? Like the number one thing that I get asked, probably a month or two after I join a team, is 2 or 3 younger folks like that are early in their career paths will like come and say, hey, can you mentor me like in a structured way? Because I want to learn how to do the things that you're talking about. And I'm really intrigued, and I've never encountered it. And like, I've been to school. I have a lot of like educational debt, but I never learned these things. Nobody has ever said these things are important to concentrate on.
Yeah. So in the book, you argue that designers will primarily, they advise rather than making decisions. And how can designers learn to embrace that reality instead of getting frustrated like they're hitting a wall all the time?
So there was I was at IXDA is a big kind of UX organization that had their 2019 conference here in Seattle, and John Maeda is really kind of well-known UX designer guy. I think he ended up MIT Media Lab for a while, maybe the RISD School of Design. I can't remember. But he did a talk that was really memorable called Doers versus Talkers. And what happened was when he was actually doing design, he had a lot of respect among his peers and in the industry and stuff. But as soon as he started to move into leadership, he started getting sort of trash talked of like, oh, well, you're not really a doer now. You're a talker. And that's another big theme that we deal with in the book, is that a lot of the design decisions of what's actually going to ship happen in budget meetings. They happen in product road mapping meetings. It's things that a large portion of us as designers and UX folks, those are not things that we're naturally interested in. We don't gravitate towards those things. And a lot of it is we feel like, oh, well, that's not my job, or that's a sellout, or I don't want to do that kind of work. Then what ends up happening is the decisions are made in those rooms and in those conversations that I have pulled back from, right? And in that, I am relegated to being an advisor, right? Even though I desire to actually help make decisions and have some of my decisions ship into the product. The only way around that we have found, and we write about in the book, is basically you gotta be more of a talker, and you gotta go more into some of that relational stuff that's going to usually get you out of your comfort zone a little bit. And it's really interesting in that we saw the coming sort of the current environment. Because we started working on this book like 3 or 4 years ago, right? Conversationally and stuff. And we had predicted where it was going to, like the sort of things we're seeing today, even 4 years ago, which is that more and more there's going to be design tools and things that come into effect that give product managers the ability to do fast iterations really quickly without a designer, right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm not into kind of that sort of how to make sense of any mess, how to solve real problems, then I'm going to be divorced. I'm going to be left out of the loop. And what we're seeing right now in the industry is this collapse. There are more UX jobs that have ever existed in the world, but because of the overhiring over the last like 5 years with the pandemic and low interest rates and stuff like that, we now have the biggest layoffs ever in UX history. And what's done is it's collapsed the top and the bottom. So if you are a director or above, it's nearly impossible to find a job. A good friend of mine, one of the most talented like design executives I've ever known, has been looking for over a year and found nothing, right? He's contracting, doing some stuff right now. Same thing, talking to people early in their career path, because we do a lot of mentoring. There are no jobs for them because everybody that's been laid off that is sort of already in the industry or up to mid-level, they're taking kind of those jobs and taking that downgrade of salary in order to stay in the industry and stay in the work.
Wow.
And so we're seeing that sort of compression layer, and a lot of it is we are being confronted as UX professionals really like circumstantially, just like the reality of the environment is if we just sort of stick into our Figmas or our murals or our mirror, our flowchart software and user journey software, we're going to be out of the loop where those decisions are made, and we might not have a job. And so this migration from being kind of a UX person to being a product manager is something that a lot of UX folks are doing, because that's a lot of times where the decisions and influence are made. And is it a sellout? Am I really a designer anymore if I become a product manager?
Yeah, right.
Like that, it's like I lose the title that like I have built a lot of affection for in my life and in my community.
Yeah, sounds like having to learn a different skill set and put yourself right in there. So you have worked in a lot of different industries, like you've covered a lot of ground. And is there a time that you can think of where design thinking helped you break through some hard organizational challenges? We can skip it if you want.
Oh, it's hard to think of a time when it hasn't, because it's just the way that I operate. You know,
Sure.
it's like, hey, we're, you know, one of the big things, like for me, one of the reasons people bring me into their teams is they've got a lot of ambiguity, right? And so I'm what's known as an ambiguity specialist. Like, throw me into the ambiguous end of the pool, right? And I can bring structure and flow to a total chaotic, like ambiguous environment, right? And it's through like understanding like the basics of design thinking. And it's like, okay, we're going to go on discovery, and then we're going to discover a lot of stuff that's really like confusing and frustrating and contradictory. And then we're in the messy middle, and then we got to figure out what to do with it. So then we're going to hone down like out of that messy middle. And then we're going to go into like a refinement phase, and like maybe we're prototyping something. And so we're going to again go into that a second sort of stage of messy middle, and then we're going to hone it down, and then we're going to ship something, right? Same thing with that understand, prototype, build like kind of framework. I think for me, it's been very interesting to see the UX industry apply design thinking to the way that it does its work. And that's the whole rise of design program management and design ops. There was a conference in 2017 put on by Rosenfeld Media called the first Design Ops Summit. And it was at the Academy for Television Arts or something in New York. And I went with some friends from Amazon, and it just blew me away because it was the first gathering of professionals who were doing this. There were like 200 of us there from around the world doing this around the world. But what we're doing is we're applying design thinking to how UX organizations do their work. And then to begin to see how that was received in the next 2 or 3 years, I was leaving Amazon and I didn't have a gig yet. And Zillow like said, hey, we heard about you, heard you know a lot about design ops. We're thinking about spinning up a design ops team. We think we need one, but we're not sure why. Can you come and talk to us? And I was like, sure. And so I went in and did my spiel, a lot of the same stuff I'm talking about here. And they ended up saying, okay, now we know why we need it. You want a job?
Yeah.
And so we started the design with a friend of mine. I co-founded the design ops group, the very first one at Zillow. And that was in 2020, a few months before the pandemic hit. And we grew it to, I think, like 11 or 12 people by the time I left. A year ago. And a lot of that was really the enterprise coming to terms with the fact that they had to work on how they work within UX teams. And my boss ended up being, I got a funny story. I got a call like the Monday or the Saturday before I was supposed to start at Zillow back in January 2020. I was like, I don't want to call from a recruiter on Saturday before I'm supposed to start. And I pick it up. Yeah. And Carly was great. She's like, hey, everything's fine. Don't worry. You're just not going to be reporting to the person that you were reporting to. And I was like, what? Is Andrew still there? Yeah, Andrew's still there. But Kristen Acker is going to be your boss. And I was like, okay, who's Kristen Acker? Co-founder of Zillow. Yeah, that's fine. That works great. Yeah. And I got to know Kristen really well, and she's one of the sort of uncredited co-founders, flies under the radar, one of the best like leaders and managers I've ever worked with. And under her, basically it was her decision to bring the two of us that were design program managers to be a part of the senior leadership team. So we were there with the 5 other sort of director level people. That's how important it was to get this right. And then we've seen that pay dividends in the industry, like at large. There are other organizations that I'm familiar with that just have really deep chops and have totally transformed the way that they make things.
Mm-hmm. Can you think of some red flags that might be a clue that a company doesn't truly value design, even when they say that they do? It's sort of like, oh, we're people first. It's not an HR manifesto or whatever, but, you know.
Yeah. So you want to look
design.
for, in the industry, we call it pixel polishing or production design, right? So there's all sorts of ways to tell, like when like the product manager just really wants you to theme their business plan. They don't want any input from you. They just want you to like put a new, give me a dark mode on my business plan, or give me a shimmer mode, or whatever it is, you know,
Right.
give me font awesome mode.
Yeah.
You know, and that is like, that's just like the number one red flag. And it usually structurally, it is also, there's a great book about like how to structure UX teams in big enterprises. It's called Org Design for Design Orgs by Peter Meerholz and Kristen Skinner. So in this book, Peter and Kristen, they talk about different org designs and sort of the red flags that you can see by the structure. Like, so, you know, you've heard the term maybe shipping your org chart, right? And so if you have designers who are reporting to people that are not in their discipline, that's a red flag. They are usually going to be people that don't have a lot of career path like in front of them, because they're reporting to people that are not in their discipline or their chosen career path, so they can't be mentored or coached very well. And then a lot of times that structure is implemented just so that you will do what you're told or asked and not ask questions, right? And so that's the number one thing. Like, look at the org chart and see how it's structured. The model I like is the one the book goes after. It's called centralized partnership. So it's like you have all the disciplines reporting up to like people in their discipline. So researchers report to researchers, designers report to designers, DPMs report to other design program managers. But then they are dotted line connected in pods to the group, to like a product group along those lines. And so you have that sort of, you know, shared cross-functional thing where you've got like 3 to 5 different disciplines that work together. And the question is too, you can have that and still not get into the act of co-creation where you're doing it as equals and peers. The other question is process-wise, like when you're doing your annual planning, how easy is that to do? What are the stress points? And are you getting pulled into those planning conversations? Is there an opportunity? Are you pulled into it? And if you're not getting pulled into it, is there resistance if you try to get involved there, right? So those are the two things. If there's resistance, then it's going to be pretty clear that you're just going to be a pixel polisher, and you're not really actually going to be solving problems, which is, that's what the whole UX industry is about, is like, okay, do you understand people, humans? Do you understand the problems they really face? And can you prototype solutions that actually make an impact and solve a business problem or solve a real human problem in a sustainable way that can create a business out of it, right? And so those are the red flags I look for, is kind of isolation, reporting to folks that are not in your discipline, and then pixel polishing in general.
So because you've been around for a while, are there mistakes that you see designers making over and over again in their careers they can maybe avoid?
You know, there are a lot of different personality types within like UX and design. But one of the things that we, you know, tend to do is we're sort of shoegazy. Like we kind of, you know, like we like to be into our own thing, you know.
Their offices look very cool and very tidy.
Yeah.
It's a vibe. It's a vibe.
And so, you know, that personality type of just like not getting out, like, you know, it's like you have a choice to eat lunch by yourself or eat lunch in a way where you can bump into your engineering team or your product management or your product marketing team or your brand team or the designers and the engineers over in your design system team, right? A lot of times I'm an introvert and my number one thing is like, I don't really feel like talking to a lot of people by default, at all. So I have to manage this discipline to put myself out there and then also learn this discipline of back to how to win friends and influence people, be in a conversation and be genuinely interested and really listen. Right. And those are the things that I see as sort of the kryptonites and superpowers, like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think that's, I can see that among like writers and creative folk in general. They love their craft. They kind of want to be left alone to do their magic, and have people come to them and solve solutions for people. But sometimes there is sort of this precious kind of like, just kind of leave me alone and give me space, and you have to really work hard to kind of get beyond that,
Neil Stephenson has this great riff in his novel Cryptonomicon, where he's talking about engineers who can do that sometimes as well. And he likens them to the dwarves in the mines of Moria, like in total isolation under the hill. And like, just leave us alone. We're going to work for a long time. Then we're going to come up with this. Oh, here's a ring. They might do stuff.
Nice. So there's something I'm going to get back to, but at Fawn Awesome we like to say we're nerds that like people. Yeah. And there is a inverse to that. Is that the right way to put it? There's an opposite to that, which we often see in these fields, which are people are enamored with the tech. They're enamored with whatever their craft is, but they sometimes struggle with the people part. But we'll get back to that. Let's see. Okay, so what role do you think that what role does story playing play in making design more influential inside an organization?
It is everything. It's everything.
Yeah.
Like, I'm always sort of spouting off all the time. People get sick of it. Like the storytelling, like structure, the simplest one I've ever come across is, here's the basics of story. Setting, character, conflict, resolution. In the classic sense, there are only 3 resolutions. Comedy, everybody gets what they want. Drama, you only get a little bit. Tragedy, you don't get shit. Right?
Yeah.
In that pattern is everything that's made you laugh, cry, be frightened, be terrified, be hopeful, be joyful, in that pattern. Outside of that pattern, who gives a shit? Like there are no stakes, right? If you don't have the possibility of getting everything you want or losing it all, there's no stakes. Like why play, right? Yeah. This is why sports is so interesting. You don't know what's going to happen, right? And that in storytelling is when I'm pitching a design, I need to capture the attention part, especially in an executive audience. These are busy people. They're overloaded with communications. Yep. If I don't know how to understand what their incentives are, their motivations, what their pain points are, if I can't speak to that, they're going to go, who gives a shit? Who cares? This doesn't how does this matter to me? Right. Yep. And so I think that one of the number one things that we can do is train designers and UX folks in storytelling. That's one of the things that I did at Zillow was in our team meetings, my little team of 3 people, 4 people, we always got the most laughs, and like people remembered what we were talking about because we followed the storytelling structure stuff in what we did. And then we got asked to be in charge of all the team meetings. And then we like, hey, can you teach storytelling for business?
Yeah.
And so we had, my friend James and I, we created standing office hours every week called presentations that change things.
Yeah.
Right. And that a lot of us are just going through the motions and doing presentations that don't change anything. Right. And just unlocking that power of like the basics of understanding storytelling and how some stories are sticky, like the book Made to Stick by Chip Heath and his brother. Just some of the best like business storytelling resources I've ever come across. And anybody that I know has worked on that has had a bigger impact. I remember a friend of mine was presenting to the CEO and one of the co-founders of Zillow. And with these, whenever you're presenting the co-founders, like it's just really dicey. And he was really great. He followed the story structure, and he's like, so we did this and we did this, and here's how it impacted the money. And he said it just like that. And he showed the numbers.
That's a story, right? Hey, Bryan, is that a story?
Like if we don't make the money, we're not going to be in business. If we don't make the money, there are going to be layoffs. Those are the stakes, right? That is behind the, like, you know, there are, you know, we will not put past us late stage capitalism's downsides and other like things in the motivations of like businesses and stuff. But those are some of the like the realistic things. And I'll never forget the CEO. We got to the feedback portion, like 10 minutes in, he's like, this was my favorite presentation ever from a UX person, because you had talked about the numbers, and I'm always asking you guys to talk about the numbers. And like the CEO lays it out. He's like, please frame it this way. And if we think that it's going to have an impact, but we can't kind of make that connection, let's talk about it out loud. Let's not just sort of sweep it under the rug, kind of a thing. Like there are some things you can't measure very well, right? That we should do, right? Like accessibility and like building things that are, you know, all of our neighbors, no matter what their ability, sight and mobility and everything, that they can all use. Those add to the bottom line, but not in a way that's like whiz bang kind of thing. So you've got to thread the needle in a different kind of story. So like maybe it's like, hey, we're going to make some money on this, but isn't this the right thing to do? What do human beings owe to one another in software development?
Right.
Isn't this a great experiment? And but maybe I don't owe anything to the 10% of the community or 20% that is, just struggles with some kind of impairment, either permanent or temporary, you know, that sort of thing. So storytelling is just like, it's the be all end all. Like it's the number one skill.
Yeah. I love that. This is always, we may or may not keep this, but, folks in the creative space, of course, are, curious and concerned about the rise of the robots and the AI. When is this stuff going to take our jobs away? Do you have some thoughts on how that's helping us right now? Maybe how it's hindering, and maybe, it's anybody's guess, but do you have any thoughts on what the future of AI holds right now in terms of design?
Yeah. Like we've had this thing thrust upon us. Like it's, it's basically built on copyrighted information for the most part. The only like ethical kind of engine that I know of is Adobe's Firefly that they did on licensed content, and it's pretty good. And so we're in the midst of it, whether we like it or not. And the thing about it is it's really good. Like the tool, like I can now do things that I couldn't do like before. Now, if I'm a product manager, like that's only going to get easier for me. I'm going to be able to do like the first, 10 to 30% of the work that a designer did for me before. and I can do it in really sound UX practices that even if I don't understand, I can get an AI that understands it for me. And that's just at the state that we're at right now, right? And so just like laser printers coming out, right, and desktop publishing it upended like the typesetting industry, right? And this is what new advances in media do to us, right? I think with AI, we're going to continue to see things that are just astonishing. Like right now, of all the apps out there in the world, like if you could find a way, and I'm sure there are people that are doing it illegally right now, but like if you could track the usage and the usage pattern throughout all the apps everybody uses on their iPhone and their Android phone, right? And the things that help them complete a task, right? And time to completion and all sorts of different usability stuff that we know is really important for how people use software in their daily lives. If I can understand those patterns at scale, then I can replicate them. Then I can improve upon them. I can do it faster than any designer or any design team. And so we have to be exploring and using those different sorts of tools. It's not a question of like, I mean, I would like to be able to sequester myself and not have to use tools that were built on like stolen copyrighted information. Right now, I'm not able to do that. And so it's like this real weird ethical thing, but it's not going away. It's not going away anytime. And like, especially with open source developments like DeepSeek and there was stuff that University of Washington and Stanford did a couple of weeks ago that brought down the cost of training really significantly compared to OpenAI, to where OpenAI was like, oh, we made the wrong decision. We should have been open source. We should have been open source sooner. Because open source is going to kind of win this thing. And so it's not going away anytime soon. And we really need to figure out how to do it. One of the interesting debacles of the last year, I helped coordinate a big design team I was working with, their remote sort of attendance of the Figma conference last fall. And Figma is it's the place to be. Like South by Southwest used to be the place to be. The Figma conference the last few years is the place to be if you're a designer and if you're into UX. And they had some really great announcements. And then they got to the AI and like they showed this AI stuff that would basically replace designers to a large degree, or not to necessarily a large degree, but like it would replace them in certain circumstances. And the response was frigid. People were like, what? And then they ended up, there were problems with the implementation. They hadn't tested well and they ended up like pulling it back. But like that sort of, like when you're in the tools business, who's your customer, right? Is your customer the designers? Is your customer the enterprise CFO that is buying the software? You basically have a double-sided market. And they basically switched their story. They were selling, I mean, talk about setting character conflict resolution. It's like in that mode, they switched to, even though the designers were in front of them, they started selling to like the CFO and the folks making the decisions on buying that software in order to basically scale their operations, which means, hey, we are giving you the opportunity to get rid of some of these people here. And yeah, it was just a catastrophe.
Yeah, that does not go well. Yeah, it's like getting a group of farmers in the old days together to talk about best practices, and they're like, we're going to have John Deere come and give us a little presentation on the latest tractor, and they're like, wait a minute, why do we need horses then? Oh man. Well, if you were to add a chapter to why design is hard, is there anything that you did not include in the book that you wish you had, or now that it's been out for a little bit later, you're thinking, oh, this needed another chapter? What would that chapter be?
I don't think there is, because we wanted to make it super short. Like, so like the add another chapter thing, we like actually had a rule. Like what did it end up becoming? Like, we wanted it to be like 100 pages. It's 108 pages.
Yeah.
So like we hit the goal. I think that, if I were to add something supplemental to it, it would be around that question of where is all this stuff heading, and let's get real about it, right?
Yeah.
Is that you probably need to be your future is probably, if you're in design now and you're mid to senior level, your future is probably in UX informed product management. And if you don't like that, like, we should talk about it.
Right. Yeah.
Like, if that like gives you pause because, you know, you like the term UX or designer in your title, like, this is where that's going, because the real problem is not design. It's how do you make sense of any mess?
Right.
How do you solve problems?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And how do you dig into it? So I think some of that practical application along those lines, because none of that stuff's going away at all.
Yeah.
And it's only going to accelerate.
Yeah. It's definitely interesting times. So you've talked a lot about storytelling. You're a great communicator. You can get complex ideas across in simple ways, and you are a part of Ignite Seattle.
Yes.
I'm curious a little about that for folks that are probably folks outside of the Seattle area aren't, they're not familiar with that. But what is Ignite Seattle, and what, let me restate it. What is Ignite Seattle, and just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Ignite Seattle started in 2006. I had, as my networking shtick, I had been a Flash developer. I knew a little bit about web video, more than most people around. And so I just started showing up with a mini DV camera to all the nerd events and saying, hey, can I help you get that presentation you just did? It was really cool on the internet. Have you heard of this YouTube thing? I think it might be, I think web video might be a thing. Yeah. You know, you want to play around with it? And so I became known as like the web video guy in sort of startup nerd circles that were emerging at that time as the nerds came out of their cubicles and social media and, you know, business blogs were happening and stuff. And it was December 2007. And basically my friend Brady and another friend, Bree, were putting on this nerd variety show, and they had a lot planned. But the only thing that stuck was they were doing 5-minute talks with 20 slides that auto advance every 15 seconds. That's the gist of it.
Yeah.
And I showed up. We published the video, recorded the videos, published the videos, and they went viral. We started getting requests of like, hey, can we do Ignites in Boulder and Phoenix and all sorts of different stuff. And so that's the gist of it is everybody's got a story to tell. Can we come up with an event that helps people tell the unique stories that are theirs, right? And so early on, it was mostly nerd topics because that's kind of where everybody was coming from. We have talks about like AI cat doors that prevent that it closes if your cat has a dead rat or a bird in its mouth. Things like that.
It's a good problem to solve.
United States of Starbucks that actually statistically it was like these are the places where the Starbucks are the furthest away. We had somebody who survived the Virginia Tech shooting because she had a pair of tennis shoes in her backpack that day. And it ended up kind of taking on a life of its own, and we've done it basically since 2006. So it's coming up almost on 20 years. Wow. And it really is a way for people to just kind of share and engage new ideas and hear stories that will make you laugh, cry, hurl. And it's been really interesting. Brady moved to San Francisco kind of around 2010-ish. And I took over and built up the team. And we're going on, I think it's 47. And we've got over 550 talks on our YouTube channel. Just some really, really, really great talks. There's a talk of a guy who lived in a billboard in the U District for like 30 days for a coffee promotion. And it was like one of the most hilarious talks I've ever seen. And then stuff like, I remember there's a talk by a guy, and you just never really know until you see them practice. And once I saw him practice the talk, it was great. But his talk was called, "What do you do when you get hit in the face with a shovel?" In your life, when what you do in your life, right? And he talked about his I think it was his daughter having severe health problems, and it was just one of the most moving things ever. And then I stepped out of leading in 2020 because I had become the old man sort of grandpa of Ignite, where when we were doing speaker selection or making decisions, if I said something, people like put more weight on what I was saying. And I was just like, okay, we need a fresh thing. So now I'm just the known as the co-founder of Ignite Seattle. But yeah, it's one of the best, like most fun things. So it's basically like TED Talks on speed.
Yeah. 5 minutes. Oh man, I can't imagine. I would be sweating bullets. Jeez.
Well, it's what's really interesting. We do speaker coaching for free, and it's some of the best speaker coaching you could ever do. Scott Birkin, my co-author on the book, does most of the speaker coaching still, and it's about teaching people that like in 5 minutes you can have about 3 story beats. And it's like less about the slides and the timing and more about, do you know your story beats and do you know your story structure and like what will the beats be, and we can help you like do those beats, and then like drawing people out. It's just been real fun. The number one talk that we had, our number one talk for years, probably the first 6 years of Ignite, was this really grainy footage of how to buy a used car. And it's still one of the number one talks. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Because everybody's got to do that, right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly.
solving problems for people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we have going back to something I kind of put a pin on earlier. We've talked a lot about nerds in these business and creative spaces.
Yeah.
And we like to say at Fawn Awesome, we're nerds that like people. And I hadn't really planned this, but I thought it would be kind of fun. We do a thing called the Nerd Show and Tell at Fawn Awesome, and it's just a way for us to introduce folks to our team.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of nerdery that happens. We have twice a year we have these get-togethers because we're a remote company, and it's our chance to nerd out, and we do sort of our Nerd Show and Tell outside of work-related stuff, and it could be work-related, but is there anything in particular that gets you really fired up that you are excited about right now that's nerdy?
That's nerdy. I mean, the number one, I think the number one thing that I think of is since the first year of the pandemic, my family and I have hosted these things we call Open Fire every Thursday night. And it sort of grew out of this guy's dinner that I had with some peers from the industry, and we did it for years. And then the pandemic hit and we switched to Zoom, and then the summer hit 2020 and we switched to fire in the backyard here at our house in Seattle. And then the fall hit and it started to rain. I was like, oh, we should probably go back to Zoom. And they're like, no, we have raincoats. And I was like, okay, I've underestimated the demand for male hangout time in the middle of a pandemic. And then it just sort of grew. We did a few different experiments on how to structure it, and then invited a few friends into that. And before we knew it, they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends, and then it was like, this is not officially a men's group. Ladies can come, and then all the ladies came, and so we've been doing it for over 4 years now. And it really is interesting. Like one of the most fun things is, we'll mention it to somebody, they're like, it's interesting. And I'll say, hey, I can put you on the calendar invite. We send it out on Mondays, usually, if you want. And they're like, yeah, add me. And then I'll see them like 6 months or a year later. And they haven't had time to come. And I was like, I don't want to bug you. I can take you off. And they're like, I've had literally 30 people at least say, never take me off the list.
No, keep me on. Yeah.
Keep me on the list.
Yeah.
And so there's something about sort of that community thing. And then we do a question of the week, where we just, we have different boxes of mixer questions that we get, probably like 6 or 7 different kind of boxes. And it's just been really interesting to see this multi-generational thing develop without anything. There's no intentional design to go, okay, let's make sure we have people over 60 or 70 here. And we have friends that have just gravitated, right? Let's make sure we have high schoolers here. Well, like my kids' friends sometimes show up when they know my kids won't be here.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that's weird. That's uncommon.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of nerdy. And so those are the ones that I think about. Yeah. And so it's really kind of community for me, and like whether it's Ignite Seattle or kind of what I do as a DPM, like even the studio that we're recording in, like this is something that I've been sort of trying to get together probably for 15 years, like in a place where we can just have a drop-in studio and have community conversations that we could record if we wanted to, and do something with that invites more people into like the conversation. And so community building, like combined with technology, it's like, I'm not a technology for technology's sake person. Right. I'm like, what are the biggest problems in the world, and like what's shit that matters. And I'm not satisfied with like the reality that we inhabit. I always want to upgrade everything that I'm frustrated by. And like, I want to do that in community. Because I'm not going to have the best ideas and connections to get things done that I want to get done. And so creating community spaces that are tech enabled so that we can do interesting things and use these magical powers of ours for good, hopefully.
And I've seen, and I'll probably add this in the intro, but we've been in each other's spheres for a lot of years and have actually become good friends and probably since you started in the fire pit, honestly. Yeah. And that's a thread that I've seen throughout, is that you want to get people connected. You want to connect with people because you care about creating solutions for the issues in the world, which I really appreciate. So if somebody wants to know more about Bryan Zug, where should they go?
That's a good question. I don't have a.
I thought you were a tech and a design guy, man. Come on, where's your website?
It's one of those things. I'm too old, so like all my WordPress sites that I've self-hosted over the years have all gotten corrupted, and like I haven't been able to like bring them back online, and like it's like all right, and so it's probably bryanzug .wordpress.com. That's sort of the landing page where you can find my stuff like around in LinkedIn and stuff like that. But yeah, it's mostly that and Blue Sky. I'm just Bryan Zug on Blue Sky. And I was a very early Twitter user. And I was pretty devastated to see what happened with Twitter in the 2016 election. And then also some other different culture events that I was a part of on Twitter, to where it just became a place that was not life-giving to me anymore, as well as kind of recent developments over the last 2 years in ownership. And that was my learning community. Like it was a real community to me. And being an early adopter and experimenter of those things, like I would get shit from friends like, that's not real community. What are you doing? You know? And I was on Threads for a while. I like Threads a lot in different ways, but there's some design decisions that they've made that I just don't think are optimal. But then Blue Sky hit its tipping point like 6 or 8 months ago. And it's just felt like the old school Twitter of the first like 2 years. Like,
I'm noticing that.
And it's just been really great. So Blue Sky is the place usually to find me. And then from there, like Instagram. Those are places.
Great. Thanks,
Yep.
Bryan, for taking some time and for hosting in this awesome space. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.